Okay, I see that people are getting on. Sorry, I kind of feel like we need elevator music or something in the background. All right, I think it's about time. It's soon going to be 7:30. I can see on my watch. So we'll just wait one more minute and then we will kickstart this event. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Talks. We're so glad you are here today joining us live from wherever you are, but especially if you're in Korea. Today, I believe it is Children's Day in Korea, a much beloved public holiday. So happy Children's Day to everyone. And this is our Children's Day present to you all. A wonderful webinar with 3 wonderful institutions and great colleagues from Georgia Tech, the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and the University of Virginia. So thank you for connecting with us here on Zoom, or if you're streaming live on YouTube. Just a reminder that you can ask questions anytime during the time this presentation is going on. There's a Q&A box on Zoom, on YouTube. There's also a chat box that you can use. So as you have questions coming up, just go ahead and chat them and we'll collate them and try our best to answer all your questions by the end of the webinar. And if we don't get to all your questions, we hope to send out an email, which is why it's really important that you do register for this event so that we can get back to you via email. 안녕하세요. Tuesday Talks에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 저는 Initial View 대표하는 김정록입니다. 이 프레젠테이션은 영어로 돼 있고요. 그리고 오늘 조지아 텍, 일리노이 대학교, 버지니아 대학교 사정관들이 우리랑 같이 대학교에 대한 소개를 하겠습니다. 언제든지 궁금한 문의할 거 있으시면 채트박스 사용하셔서 언제든지 올려주세요. 한국어로도 해도 괜찮습니다. 우리가 영어로 번역해서 사정관들에게 드리겠습니다. So without further ado, I will let our wonderful admissions officers introduce themselves. So starting off from Sarah, but before I do, I just want to thank you all for coming. It is very early here in America, whether you're on the East Coast or in Central Time. So thank you for coming. So anyhow, further ado, let's go with Georgia Tech. Sarah, go Yellow Jackets.
Thank you, and good morning from the East Coast of the United States. Good evening to you in Korea. My name is Sarah Riggs, and I work with incoming international first-year students at Georgia Tech.
I think we can go next to Jess.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Jess Strong. I'm the International Recruitment Coordinator at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, also known as UIUC, Illinois. You have many names, so you'll see that throughout as well, and I'll reference it multiple ways, but thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to chat with you.
Hello everyone, my name is Clara. I work at the University of Virginia, also known as UVA. Thank you all for being here with us today To get us started, I will pass this over to Jess to explain a little bit more what a public research university is.
If you could go back one slide real quick for him. Thank you. So we're going to just start really broad, and it may not sound the most exciting. I promise we will get to why we are bringing this up in the middle of our presentation. But we thought it was important to start with what is a public institution, since you have 3 public institutions here this morning or this afternoon or evening, wherever you're joining from. And so we wanted to start very broad, and I promise we will get to why some of the benefits are in a second, but I think this context is important to start with. It's important to know where our mission, our support, and our oversight comes from. So all of us are located in one of the great 50 states of the United States. And so we are committed to serve the state which we are located in. And part of that is because we are funded in part by state government, which means we have some regulations that come from state government as well. So some things that usually result in that means that there's going to typically be more in-state students than there are out-of-state students, or maybe even international. There could also be a difference in tuition from in-state to out-of-state, and that's important to understand. It's not because we want to just charge you more from where you are, it's because of state regulations that this may come into place. And then that also does have an impact on financial aid and scholarships that are often dedicated to students. And so we wanted to make sure you had this context as you go through this. This will make sense towards the end in terms of what options there might be and things like that available for you. And so with that, I'm going to pass it off to Clara for her to go over some more of the fun and more benefits of going to a public institution.
There are some key characteristics that we all have in common as public research universities in the United States, one of which is we're all very large and very diverse universities. Our diversity is really one of our biggest strengths. We have students coming from all over the United States as well as all over the world. So it's a very rich, diverse learning environment where you're in classrooms and you're in dorms with people from all different places. It's really a great place to be, and this network is much larger as well. All of our universities have great reputations. Employers really want to hire students from all of our universities, and we have many contacts for students who are graduating. We also have very large, diverse alumni networks, different alumni chapters all over the world. I know UVA alumni really look out for each other, and I'm sure it's the same for Georgia Tech and UIUC. And the good thing about going to a larger university is that the opportunities are really endless. Almost anything you could ever imagine, whether it's academic, social, professional, there are just so many opportunities, and it's really up to every student how they want to build their own experience with all of the opportunities and resources available. We'll go into that a little bit later. We are also all research intensive universities. That means a few things. We have world-class, amazing faculty who are really experts in all of their respective fields. And those faculty are also really committed to undergraduate students and making sure undergraduate students have a positive learning experience. We also have incredible resources and facilities. Having great faculty means that they bring research funding to the university, and a lot of that funding helps support undergraduate students as well. And we have really state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line facilities in research and outside of research as well. And another thing we have in common is major level athletics. We call them Division I athletics in the US. And this really just leads to an intense sense of school spirit. Even if you're not someone who's usually into sports, athletics are really something that builds community for our universities and our campuses. And there's nothing quite like going to a Division I basketball or football game and having everyone cheer for the school. So it's something I really recommend you try at least once while in university. But for now, I'm going to pass this off to Sarah for Georgia Tech's portion.
Thanks, Clara, for getting us started. And so each of us are going to talk a little bit about our respective institutions now, so that you get a sense of certainly how all of us as public institutions, public research institutions in the United States are similar, but you'll also see that we have some very distinct differences among each of our institutions. And so we'll start with Georgia Tech in telling you a little bit more about who we are and who we're not at the Institute. And I'll just also give a quick shout out to Hojin, who's joining us in the chat, providing some translation for you, who is a current Georgia Tech student. So if he feels there's anything needed in the translation that I'm not covering, he can certainly add that for all of you. At Georgia Tech, our students and faculty and staff, our institute is really focused on the idea of creating the next. Georgia Tech was founded in 1885, which in US history and in world history was certainly a time of great change and great uncertainty, the height of the Industrial Revolution, when the idea of what comes next was looming large over the world. And so Georgia Tech was founded as a place for students to begin answering those questions and really providing solutions for some of the world's most complex challenges at the time. And while that was certainly true then, of course, we're living in a time right now where that is truer than ever. We'll move to the next slide. Thank you. And at Georgia Tech, our motto has always been, still is today, progress and service. And what that means for us is that our students are really focused on looking at the world, understanding some of the most challenging issues facing our world, and really taking opportunities at Georgia Tech to certainly learn in the classroom, but immediately begin applying that information to creating solutions for some of those challenges and to, in some capacity, improving the human condition. One example of the kind of opportunity that's available to you at Georgia Tech is something called the Inventure Prize. This is a year-long invention competition in which students will work with teams, whether that's another student in your academic major or students across academic backgrounds at Georgia Tech, as well as faculty, to essentially create a solution to some challenge. And throughout a series of elimination rounds and further development of whatever product it is that you and your team are creating, this culminates in a live studio audience broadcast of final 6 teams presenting in front of a live studio audience and a panel of judges and venture capitalists. And the winning team gets $20,000 US funded by a Google seed fund. And basically, you also receive patenting assistance from Georgia Tech. So whatever product it is that you've developed, you continue to own that product. It does not become property of Georgia Tech, but rather it's yours. And so this is just one of the many great opportunities where we're really encouraging innovation and application of what you've learned academically. The team that won the Inventure Prize last year was Ethos Medical. It's the 3 gentlemen that you see on the screen in front of you now. And the problem that they were identifying was basically that spinal injection, whether that's a lumbar puncture, an epidural, any kind of spinal injection, is highly risky procedure, and it's very, very dangerous. There was a really high rate of error for that procedure as well, because it involved a medical professional feeling around in your spine to identify exactly where to insert the needle. And so obviously there's a high error, high risk error rate and also a high rate of error. And so this team, Ethos Medical, developed a technology that guides needle placement exactly, as well as an ultrasound tool, so that it completely minimizes the risk and improves accuracy. And medical professionals are now beginning to use that. It's becoming much more commonplace around the states, and they are moving forward with that company as a viable business option for the three of them as well. So of course, this is just one of the many examples of the way that innovation takes place on our campus, but we're excited for you to come to Georgia Tech and participate in the Inventure Prize. And of course, you can't take advantage of things like the Inventure Prize if you don't have a solid academic foundation. And for us at Georgia Tech, I told you we would talk about who we are as well as who we're not. And at Georgia Tech, we are a true mid-sized research institution with about 16,000 undergraduate students on our campus, but we only offer 35 majors across our 6 colleges at Georgia Tech. And so we are not all things to all people. And no matter what you study at Georgia Tech, whether that's public policy, or whether that's mechanical engineering, you're going to be doing so through the lens of science and technology and industry, and how those fields ought to inform whatever field it is that you're specifically studying. In fact, the only undergraduate degree that you will earn from Georgia Tech is a Bachelor of Science. Even if you're studying history at Georgia Tech, you're studying it history of science and technology, and you're earning a Bachelor of Science degree when you graduate as an undergraduate. Though we are a mid-sized research institution, we certainly want to provide you a very close, intimate, hands-on academic community where 85% of our classes do have fewer than 50 students in them. And we're excited to say that 97% of our students who start out as first-year students are certainly doing well academically to be eligible to return, but also happy and thriving outside of the classroom to choose to want to return with a retention rate of 97%. And as I mentioned earlier, at Georgia Tech, it is not our goal simply to have you sit in the classroom and learn a lot of information. While, of course, that is important, we expect for you as soon as possible to move outside of the classroom at Georgia Tech and begin applying that information. We certainly hope and think that you're going to learn more that way. Of course, opportunities for study abroad exist for you, even though you may already be studying abroad by coming to Georgia Tech to begin with. But also, as a research-intensive university, we have many, many research opportunities available for our undergraduate students, both for pay and for academic credit. So our students are really taking advantage of those opportunities and getting involved as soon as possible, whether that research is happening in your major or in a different field of study. We certainly encourage and are going to facilitate many ways for you to engage actively with research at Georgia Tech. And then finally, we have many opportunities for students to participate in internships and co-ops, which are just basically longer commitments of internships. And most of our students are participating in internships or co-ops. And even as an F1 student visa holder, you do have privileges of OPT and CPT, which will help you participate in these opportunities. And Georgia Tech would not be Georgia Tech without Atlanta, and also Atlanta would not be Atlanta without Georgia Tech. We are located in the middle of Midtown Atlanta, which is the economic capital and hub of the southeastern United States. It is one of the larger cities in the United States, and we are located right in the center of that city. Georgia Tech is fairly unique as an urban campus in that we are a centralized and contained campus where there is lots of green space and you can live and work and play and eat right there on our campus. And it doesn't necessarily feel spread out among this major city. However, you do obviously have all of the benefits that come along with being in a major city, many of those resources, such as large companies to participate with internships and co-ops in, as well as a huge startup hub, a good startup spirit in the city of Atlanta. And then, of course, just it's a really fun place to be. Some of those less tangential benefits come along with things like great music coming through the city of Atlanta, really good cuisine located in Atlanta, and good parks, lots of good opportunities just for enjoying a larger city. And then, of course, we are home to the world's busiest airport in Atlanta as well. So no matter where you're flying in from, it should be a pretty easy, quick journey for you with limited connections. So it's easy to get to Atlanta. And then once you arrive at the airport, we're only about 6 metro stops away from that world's busiest airport here on our campus. And of course, we want you to think about that return on investment. We understand that your education is certainly an investment that you're making, both of time and financial resources. And so, of course, we want to encourage you by letting you know that 87% of our students do have a job offer at the point of graduation, with an average starting salary that's close to double the national average of US university graduates. While financial aid options are typically not available for our international students, we do encourage you to participate in things like co-ops and internships, part-time jobs, and of course, research for pay as a way to help supplement that cost of attendance at Georgia Tech. These job offer numbers and starting salary numbers, I should say, do include international students. So this is not just specific to US students. It does, in fact, include our international student graduates as well. We do have a career services and an Office of International Education staff member combined who work with both offices, but also work specifically with our international students in the job seeking process. And we also, in fact, use Initial View to help with job placement beyond graduation. So it's something that you can use as part of your application process to Georgia Tech, and then part of your application process as you begin to leave Georgia Tech as well. And finally, if we're unable to answer any of your questions today, please reach out to the email address listed here. They will connect you either with myself or with the correct person in our office or on our campus to get your questions answered. So thank you again for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Clara to tell you some of the ways that UVA may be the same, but also different from Georgia Tech.
All right, thank you, Sarah. As she mentioned, I'm going to talk about University of Virginia, or UVA. Let's head to the next slide right away. I know it can be a little boring to hear about history, but I do think it's important to mention UVA's history because it is still such a key part of our university. If you've ever studied US history, you've probably heard the name Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson founded the University of Virginia over 200 years ago now, and he founded it to be a living and learning environment. He designed campus, which we call grounds, and this is just one snapshot of it, which we call the lawn. Professors traditionally lived in these pavilions and still do, and students lived in these lawn rooms. Students still live on the lawn today. Fourth-year students can apply to live on the lawn. It's seen as the greatest honor a UVA student can have. And the lawn is also important to all UVA students because it really is our central gathering place. It's where we come together for all different kinds of community events throughout the year. It's where students traditionally graduate. So it's a very important part of our community, an important physical representation of our grounds. And just to give you a snapshot of UVA by some numbers, we are a mid-size research university like Georgia Tech. And I think we're kind of the best of both worlds in terms of size. We're large enough to have all of the opportunities of a public research university, but we are also small enough where students get really individualized, really personalized experiences, and our faculty really focus on undergraduate students. I think there's misperception that public research universities are all about graduate students, and that's not really the case. Our faculty love working with undergraduate students, and it's a great place to be as an undergrad, both in terms of academics as well as the student experience. Almost all of our courses are taught by full-time faculty, 95%, and the other 5% are often visiting faculty who are really experts, whether they work in politics in Washington, D.C., whether they're researchers in something STEM related. They really are experts and bring a lot to our university. And I know a lot of students worry about class sizes. Over half of our classes have fewer than 20 students, and 85% of classes have fewer than 50 students. So there are some larger lecture style classes on grounds, but also plenty of opportunities to have smaller class sizes. And that all depends on the subject matter for the course, as well as what kind of level it is at the university. And UVA is also really known for having some of the highest retention and four-year graduation rates, especially among public universities in the US. It's something we're known for every year. So students who come to UVA, they really want to stay at UVA for their second year and all 4 years of university. Now the big question, what can I study at UVA? This is often the first thing people ask. We have 5 different options for students applying as first-year students. Those are arts and sciences, engineering, architecture, nursing, and kinesiology. I'll just go over them briefly. The College of Arts and Sciences is really our liberal arts curriculum. So it has everything: social sciences, humanities, languages, as well as the natural sciences and math as well. The nice thing about the College of Arts and Sciences is that students have until the end of their second year to pick a specific major. So it's okay if you want to explore your options, try out a few different majors before making a firm decision. It's definitely okay to do that, and that's the common thing to do at UVA. Next, we have our School of Engineering. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, students just apply to the overall program, the School of Engineering, and then they pick a specific major at the end of their first year. Architecture is similar. You apply to the program, select a major at the end of the first year. Nursing and kinesiology are the 2 programs for first-year students where you really are selecting a major when you submit your application. Then we have our 3 upper divisional schools. We call them upper divisional because you apply once you're already a student at UVA. We have our McIntyre School of Commerce. It is our undergraduate business program. Students spend 2 years in arts and sciences, and then they apply to McIntyre at the end of their second year. So the 3rd and the 4th year are very focused on that business curriculum. We have our Curry School of Education. It has all of the majors related to education and human development. And then our Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy, which is all about public policy and governance. Students typically apply to those schools at the end of the second year as well. Most important thing to remember about this slide, you have 5 options when you're applying as a first-year student, and unless you're interested in nursing or kinesiology, you don't have to decide on a major right away. You have some time to figure that out once you get here. And the last thing I wanted to say about that slide is that we're all research universities, and I think it's important to remember that research happens in every single area of the university. You can do research certainly in engineering or physics or biology, but there's also really unique, interesting research happening in history and linguistics and in business. So if you're interested in research, that's something that can happen with any different kind of academic interest. And then there are two things that really set UVA apart. They're values that we hold very deep and things that have been around since the university was founded by Jefferson. It's our commitment to honor and student self-governance. UVA has the oldest student-run honor code in the nation. It's very simple. It's no lying, no cheating, and no stealing. And all students sign the honor code when they get to UVA. It really develops a sense of trust between students. Students trust each other to be honest in the classroom, as well as in all parts of the university. You see it every day with small examples. Students go to the library, they can leave their things there while they get a bite to eat and come back. Their computer is still going to be there. There's really just a sense of trust and unity that's developed by the honor code. And the honor code is also completely student self-run. So students have an honor committee every year, and they really go through any cases of the honor code that need to be discussed. And we have student self-governance on a bigger scale as well. Student self-governance was also founded by Jefferson, and it's the idea that students at the university have a voice, students have the power to create change, students drive the university forward. And again, you see this every single day at UVA. You see it with really small decisions that students make. And you also see it in the really big decisions. So we inaugurated a new president of our university about 1.5 years ago now. Students were involved in that decision-making process. Students really get to make an impact at UVA for 4 years, and often an impact that will make an impact long-term as well. Now, where is UVA? UVA is in Charlottesville, Virginia. We have been named the happiest city in America, really for our quality of life. We have a great arts culture and annual festivals. Under normal circumstances, there is a festival almost every single weekend in Charlottesville, whether it's on grounds or in the Charlottesville community downtown. We have excellent restaurants as well. We have the highest number of restaurants per capita in any city in the US other than New York. So great places to eat any kind of cuisine you could ever want, and great music venues as well. We also have great access to nature and the outdoors. We are at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Appalachian Trail. So if you're interested in hiking, getting outside, going kayaking, anything like that, we have great opportunities to get into the outdoors really easily. UVA is what we call a college town in the US. So the UVA community and Charlottesville are very interconnected. You can't have one without the other. And it's great because the Charlottesville community really supports the university, but students also give back to the Charlottesville community. Jefferson believed that students should be citizen scholars. So great scholars, great students, but also good citizens, good neighbors, kind neighbors, really looking out for each other. And you see that with UVA students every day. And a little bit more about student life. As I mentioned earlier, we have Division I athletics. We won the national championship about 1 year ago. If anyone here is a basketball fan, you might have seen it. It was a big event, first national championship in basketball for our university, really something that brought students together. But we also have lots to do in student life outside of athletics. UVA has many different a cappella groups if you're interested in music. We have other music ensembles as well, but a cappella is really what we're known for. If anyone saw the movie Pitch Perfect a few years ago, UVA students were involved in the making of Pitch Perfect, getting to perform, as well as having some of our alumni involved in developing the film. And then we also have over 900 different clubs that are related to all different things. Some are pre-professional, some related to the arts, some are really just interest groups to bring students together. Almost anything you'd want to be involved with as a student is available. And if it's not available, students get to start their own clubs, create their own opportunities. That is, again, part of student self-governance and students really creating the university that they want to see. Next slide. And lastly, if you have any questions, we are always available to answer your questions. My personal email address will be on a later slide, but you can always go to our general admission website. We also have a blog called Notes from Peabody with lots of information on our admission process and lots of data from past years, if you're interested in taking a look at that. And we also have a virtual tour online. I know it's especially tough to visit right now, but if you want to see more images of the university, you can go ahead and check out our virtual tour that was also made by students. That's it for me for UVA, but I will pass this off to Jess to talk a little bit more about UIUC.
Thank you so much. So you guys have made it to the last school. We promise we have time for questions at the end, so hang with us for one more brief overview of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, or UIUC. I always like to start with this picture, as this is really just a good overview of part of campus. We have 4 academic quads about this size that equal campus, so this is just one of them, just to give you an idea. But the other reason I show this is because you can see from this picture, there are no tall buildings. We are not in a city, which leads to the next picture on the slide for us. This is where we're located. We are 2 hours south of Chicago by train. We are in 2 cities, Champaign and Urbana, which when you say where we are, it's always Champaign-Urbana, but when you say the campus, it's always Urbana-Champaign. There's no right or wrong reason. The cities are equally loved and the university sits directly between them. So you don't even realize you're in 2 cities. You may be passing between them during classes. That's how closely connected we are. We are a college town, so everything that you need is going to be there. We have around 250,000 people that make up the entire metropolitan area, which for a city in the middle of the United States is actually pretty large. And you are really well connected to a major metropolitan city of Chicago, the 3rd largest in the US. We have 10 buses a day that run between Chicago and Champaign, as well as 4 trains that run between the 2 cities. And so it is very easy to connect, but you find yourself as a student not going there as often after you really start to settle in and realize everything you need is going to be in the community. We have a place on campus called Research Park I'll touch on, but there's over 120 companies located there that you have access to. So we have even brought the companies down from Chicago and other cities for you to have access. And so I promise as you start to explore your location and where you are, it does become a really exciting place because everything in the Champaign-Urbana community is there for you as a student. So we'll lead into some of the academics and what makes the university itself. So we are the largest of the 3 here. We have over 150 majors and they're brought through 11 academic colleges and schools. We are most well known for our Granger College of Engineering, which has 14 engineering programs within it, and our Geese College of Business that has 7 majors. When you apply to the University of Illinois, you are applying directly to the program of your choice. So the only options to apply undeclared is undeclared to the university and then undeclared to the Geese College of Business. Everything else we ask that you apply directly to the program of your interest. I will say undeclared is not a good route for students thinking business or engineering because it is extremely difficult to get into those majors once on campus. Not impossible, but extremely difficult. So I recommend students applying directly to what they're wanting to study, but know about 25% of our incoming class will start as undeclared. So we do support you in your decisions to explore all 150 options. You can see on our website listed at the bottom there that that's where all of our majors are going to be fully detailed for you. So you have an idea of what college they fall in, what programs are involved in it, and what will you study. There's a lot more information there about success rates and things like that. We are a big campus, so about 80% of our classes have fewer than 50 students in it though, so we do intentionally try to make our classes as small as possible, but it will be impossible to come to Illinois and not have a large lecture hall. So we do want to make sure you know our largest lecture hall seats 750 students. So it's important to start with the biggest, just so you understand. It's okay if the University of Illinois is not a perfect fit for you, but we want to make sure you have all of that information when you are making your decision. And then their student to faculty ratio is about 18-1. So you do have access to the faculty. All of them have open office hours. They are willing to meet with you and encourage you to make this place as personalized as you want it to be. And that's one of the ways to do so. So going into the next, this is going to talk about our connections and the size of campus a little bit more. If you decide to attend the University of Illinois, you're going to be joining about 7,500 other incoming freshmen. So it is a very big incoming class. Those students are from all 50 states typically, and at least 75 countries within the incoming class, but our total campus population for undergraduates is around 34,000, bringing our total enrollment to 51,000. So we are a very large public research institution. One of the things that makes the university unique is that we are a top 5 hosting institution for international students. With that, bringing our total to around 11,000 international students between undergrad and graduate, and they're from around 114 countries. We support you on your F1 visa up till 3 years after graduation for optional practical training or STEM optional practical training, which brings our total international enrollment right around 14,000 when you include those students studying after their 4 years on campus. So it's a really big place, but you're going to have people that are going to challenge you from all over the world, which is part of what makes the experience exciting on our campus. I'm going to head to the next slide. So we've talked about this briefly, but this is one of the things that makes the universities unique here. And you make this experience exactly what you would like it to be. And most of our students will do so with our student groups. Illinois is really big, and I think most schools are, on acronyms. Once you get there, you start to learn the lingo of the campus. And so we are big on acronyms. So our student groups are called RSOs, or Registered Student Organizations. And we have over 1,800 clubs and organizations for students to join. So there's really something for everyone. Again, we've mentioned these types of categories. There are some that are more academic based, more pre-professional, maybe pre-health or pre-med. There are some that are going to be really fun and silly. So if you love everything about the month October, we have an October Lovers Club, and that's all they do is meet in the month of October. So really, you can make those student groups as big or as small as you want them to be. You can start your own, which is why our list is over 1,800 long at this point. And so we really want to make sure you get that experience out of your friend group and what your passions are. Global experiences are big. You can study abroad in over 350 places. And many students like to do that to study just one semester. Maybe it's back home in Korea for a semester. We have several partner institutions there. Or it's experiencing a new country. That's okay. So we're happy to help you make sure you have the study abroad experience you might want. Being that we're in a college town, concerts and festivals are a big thing. I love to talk about my favorite festival in town. It makes it sound very Midwest and will give you an understanding of where we're from, but we have the Super Sweet Corn Festival every year. And the super sweet corn strain that was invented was on our campus. And so we like to celebrate that. So if you've ever had super sweet corn, which you probably have at some point in time and didn't know it, it was invented in Illinois. And so that's part of what we like to celebrate, things like that, as well as other art scenes. We have a film festival every spring. We have a student-led art show. And so we really want to support and sponsor and really celebrate all things when it comes to that. Big Ten athletics is one of my personal favorite parts of campus because I'm a huge sports fan. We have 19 Division I athletic teams on campus. 17 of those are free for you to attend. 2 of them have a $100 season ticket for both teams combined, which is football and men's basketball. But they're really fun to attend, and the student sections are really out of this world in terms of enthusiasm and support. And so I encourage you to go to at least one athletic event while you're on campus. But if that's not your thing, I promise you're going to find something in the list as this kind of goes on. I won't go into all of the details, but just know that you can make this experience as big as you would like it to be. But we know the one thing I did leave off this, which is going to be on the next slide, is the research and internships that you have available. We know that that's a huge question we get all the time. So I wanted to make sure we had a whole slide dedicated to what research and out of the classroom experiences you might be able to have. So the University of Illinois was founded, and it's good to have the context of this, as a school to be creating new and better solutions for both today and tomorrow. Similar to Georgia Tech, we were founded around the same time with that same mission of We really want to create the next thing and the new and biggest thing. And that really does lead into our research that we have continuously happening on campus. So the first graphical web browser, Mosaic, was invented on our campus at the NCSA, the National Computing Super Applications Center. We had the world's largest supercomputer, which is why we really get known for our technology, more the computer science types of things. And so students have a really big passion in terms of that. That's wonderful. You can continue research in that area. But it's exciting for me to say that we have a lot of research opportunities out of the STEM fields as well, in humanities, education, arts. And so we really encourage students, regardless of their major interest, to get involved in undergrad research. About 70% of our students will participate in at least one research experience during their undergraduate time on campus. There's over 100 centers and programs available. So it does become very easy for students to get involved in this type of area. There are some that are paid positions, others for credit. Some of them are just going to be for experience and resume building. So you're going to have a lot of access and opportunities depending on what you're thinking. We also recognize internships are a big deal. We have a place on campus, as mentioned earlier, called Research Park, and the websites are here for you to continue exploring. But Research Park has 120 companies that are either Fortune 100, Fortune 500, or tech startups that are located on campus. So about 90% of them are going to be considered on-campus jobs. So as international students, you don't have to have any type of extension on your visa. You can work up to 20 hours a week there. And you're working for companies like in this logo, might be Caterpillar, Yahoo, excuse me, InBev, Deloitte. Sorry about that. My voice is cutting out all of a sudden. And so you can see there's a whole list of places that you can work without even leaving campus. We will help you find internships. We never guarantee them. So I think that's important to note that you will be given access to these things. You'll be given the research or the resources to make sure you get them and move forward, but we will never guarantee a position at any company for students. So you're going to have a lot of access. You can start doing research freshman year. You can continue it all 4 years and really make that experience what you need it to be. So I think this then leads into some of the next pieces for us is that you're going to get more than just a diploma from the University of Illinois. You're going to have success. And part of that is because of we are a top 50 US institution, meaning that you have access to a lot of resources and funding. You have a lot of different programs available. But then because of that, we have 11,300 unique employers that recruit on our campus every year, which leads to some of our success rates. We have it broken down into a lot of data that is overwhelming at first, but I promise it answers all the questions we usually get. And that's at illinoisuccess.illinois.edu. We had a 93% placement rate within 6 months of graduation last year for a class of 2019 into a job, career, or volunteer experience or graduate school within 6 months. And so we do make sure that you're going to be successful right away. We have dedicated career services officers that are helping students with international backgrounds or with those that are US citizens wanting to go abroad. So you will have a lot of opportunities for that. So if we go to the next slide, this will be the contact information for you. The international admissions email is answered by 5 of my global ambassadors. I have one from Korea that is happy to answer questions. If you want to know more from his perspective, just reach out. But we have various majors represented, and then our website's going to have a lot of information for you. So definitely check that out because we are very transparent in our review process and what we're looking for per major there as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it back on to Sarah real quick to just give you some final wrap-ups of tying us together as some institutions. So thank you.
Yes, thanks, Jess. I am going to tell you a little bit about, I'm sure a lot of the questions that you have relate specifically to admission and the admission process. So let me just give you a really big overall picture of what holistic review means. Whereas threshold admission might mean that you need a specific test score and specific grades in your high school experience to be admitted, holistic admission, which we all 3 use and many US institutions use, means that we are looking at certainly your academic experience, inclusive of those test scores and grades and what classes you're taking. But we're also looking at how you're engaging in the community around you, who you are, and how you might be a good fit to each of our institutions. As you know, each of us is very different, and so that means that a student may be a particularly good fit for one but not the other of our institutions. And so the holistic review process is really trying to discern who you are, both that you're academically prepared, but also that you are a good fit for each of our institutions as well. So we do have many types of admission processes in the US, meaning that perhaps you're applying to a test blind or test optional institution, whereas you'll find that each of the three of us do actually require those standardized tests. So we are test required institutions. And then while some schools may admit specifically to major or by major, and so have a different review process for each major, some are looking at overall institute admissions. So we are looking at the whole applicant pool and making those decisions regardless of what major is or isn't listed on an application. I'll also say that we are partners with you in this review process. You are giving us all the tools that we need to successfully review your application, but we are also partners with your school counselors. So all of you will have someone at your school who can communicate specific information to us, because holistic review really relies heavily on context. Context of what kinds of courses are available to you, what kinds of courses you're choosing, context of what's offered at your school outside of the classroom. We're working really closely with your college counselors to discern how we should be reviewing your application, in what context, and they're providing us a lot of helpful information in that process as well. So holistic review is certainly a partnership among the institution, between your school and yourself. And then we will show you quickly on a very high level an example of how each of us are going to be a little bit different in the review process. Yes, we all review similarly, but in that holistic way, but there are some nuanced differences. For instance, we all require the SAT or ACT. As Jess mentioned at the beginning, we are regulated in part by the state government, and so as public institutions, we can't simply waive those testing requirements, even in a particularly complicated time and year where testing access may be a bit more limited. As of now, we're still requiring those, but please continue to check back to our websites in case there are any updates. But then, for instance, we do not necessarily require TOEFL or IELTS, whereas at Georgia Tech, you have to demonstrate English proficiency. That you certainly could use TOEFL or IELTS for that, but you can also use an initial view interview or a particular curriculum that's been taught entirely in English. So in some capacity, you have to demonstrate English proficiency. At Illinois, that particular standardized test is optional, but at Virginia, it would be required, a TOEFL or an IELTS. And then you'll see that while at Georgia Tech, we don't admit by major, at Illinois, you are admitted by major, whereas at Virginia, UVA, you may or may not be admitted by major, depending on the particular program. So, of course, we are all very similar as public research institutions, but also, as you can see, very, very different in our actual processes. So I will turn it back over to Jean-Marc now, who can guide us through some of the questions you might have so that we can dive a little bit deeper into answering what you particularly want to know today.
Great. Well, we will dive right into the questions. There have been questions about majors, and I think, Sarah, you just mentioned that, but maybe just another clarification of how important is it to declare a major when you apply and to show that you are specifically interested in a certain major? And then on the other hand, how easy is it to change majors? So I know each institution has your own different characteristics there.
I'll go first and very quickly, since we're the school that does not admit by major, and tell you that what you do have to declare a major on your application. But basically what that means is we're reviewing your application through the lens of what it is that you want to study. It does not mean that you're committed to that major forever, and you can move easily among and between majors, even colleges at Georgia Tech. But basically how that plays into your application process is if you are applying to study aerospace engineering or mechanical engineering at Georgia Tech, and you have you're at an IB school and you have IB higher level math available to you, but you're not taking IB higher level math, that's going to give us some pause, because what you're telling us in your application is, I want to study this very math intensive subject. So basically, we're looking to see that how you have prepared academically connects with what you want to study at Georgia Tech. So it is not an admission only to a specific program, but rather how have you prepared for what it is that you want to study? And that's how we're treating it at Georgia Tech.
At Illinois, I can answer similarly. We are also considering the context of what you're studying in terms of subject areas. So it's important to study math if you're going into engineering, or study physics. But if you're not applying into those aren't going to be as impactful for us. We are admitting directly to our majors though. So we would ask that you apply to the program you would intend to study. There are two options that you can switch into that are very difficult, which would be business and engineering once on campus. And you can only do so at the end of your freshman year. So we do ask that if you aren't admitted, you make that decision by the end of it, and there is a competitive review process to do so. So it's still not easy. If you're switching out of business and engineering though, freely do so to any of the other programs. We would be happy to move you to those other areas, as there's a long list of students that want to switch into them. So switching out of the competitive programs, easy. Switching into them, very difficult.
I won't spend too much time on this, but I will clarify, when you're applying to UVA, you're applying to one of the schools and colleges that I mentioned earlier. It definitely is possible to switch majors. We want you to like what you're studying. And most students aren't coming in with a specific major. They're just admitted to arts and sciences, engineering, or architecture. I will say if you're leaning toward a smaller program like engineering, I recommend applying to the smaller program, because it's easier to go from engineering to arts and sciences than the other way around, just because our engineers have more structured curriculum requirements. So do students in things like nursing and architecture.
Great, thank you. There's an excellent question in regards to how your campuses support international students.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead, Jess, sorry.
Yeah, so many of our campuses, if not all of us, have an International Student Scholar Support Office of some capacity. It may be named slightly different, but in the grand scheme of things, we're all going to have a support office very similar to this. And there's going to typically be a week-long orientation at many schools that will be a time for you to transition to campus. That will vary depending on the type of school or how many days are available, but there will be some type of orientation set up. And depending on the institution and where they're located, there could be similar things happening or differences. So for example, at Illinois, we have 5 buses that run daily from Chicago O'Hare Airport every day during orientation week that run you to campus. So if you want to fly into Chicago O'Hare, we will pick you up there with signs and banners and bring you to campus and drop you off at your residence hall. And then you have a week of programming, setting up a bank account, buying winter clothes if you don't have any, really getting used to campus and learning where your classes are. What does that life look like from Korea to the United States? And what transition things do you need to learn? And so you are going to be supported, in some ways maybe over supported than you didn't realize you need. And so you will have options to make sure that that transition is possible. We also invite our overseas Americans that may still have had all their education overseas to come to the International Orientation Week. as they still might need a bank account and need to transition to life in the US. And so it is a very inclusive week that we really help support you moving in.
Yeah, and I'll just re-highlight that we all have very robust and vibrant international communities on our campus. And so international students are not an anomaly on our campuses. You have a really, really strong group of peers who are also international students at each of our institutions and at most public research institutions in the US. And so, as just mentioned, there are incredibly solid support structures in place, both to first welcome you to our campuses, but also then to guide you through and beyond our campuses. As Clara mentioned, one of the major benefits of a large public research institution is that incredibly strong support network, both on our campus, but also once you graduate, the really strong alumni network that also includes many international alumni. And so both coming to our institutions, at our institution and beyond, there is a lot of support in place for each of you as international students or as US citizens perhaps living abroad who may also want to return abroad beyond graduation.
Great. There is a specific question kind of along those lines, but about Korean military service. Given the current situation that we're in right now, people's plans may have shifted in regards to whether or not they should do military service now or after a year or two of going to the US for college. Could each of you just speak to what your institutions would recommend in this regard?
I can start with this one. I do recommend asking each institution individually. As you'll see, we all have slightly different policies. At UVA, we can be very flexible. Students can come to UVA right away, take a break for their military service and come back. We can also defer for more than a year if it is for military service. So if you graduate from high school, want to complete the service right away, and then come to UVA, that's perfectly fine. You can apply just like normal as a high school senior, and we can defer your admission until that's completed.
At Illinois, it's going to look a little different. So this year we are allowing students to delay admission for up to a year if it is military related, but we understand that your military commitment is 2 years, so we cannot delay admission for 2 full years. So if you are planning to start and do your military right away, we would say withdraw your application at this point and then start your service and then apply when you're in your final year of service to do that at Illinois. However, majority of our Korean students are going to come to campus, then leave after 1 or 2 years, and then come back to finish their education. That's what we prefer your path of education be at Illinois. It is easier to do that than it is to delay admission and apply later. So definitely come and start and then leave and then come back.
And much like UVA at Tech, we will also defer your admission for 2 years for each of your years of military service. So you have some flexibility in deciding at Tech like UVA.
Great. I am mindful of the time and that we're a little bit past the hour, but we'll just end with one more question that has been posed. And that's just in regards to just how competitive the admissions. I mean, this is kind of a big question. It is, and how much does one need to push themselves beyond the school curriculum even to be admissible to your institutions?
I'll start at Illinois. So because we admit to majors, each program is going to have various levels of competitiveness. We do post per college breakdown in terms of score ranges and GPA that we've accepted last year. So that's a good benchmark. However, one thing I will point out, if something is not offered at your school, we will not consider it in our review process academically. So we want to see that you've challenged yourself with the things that were presented to you at the institution you're at. So that means we do not look at SAT subject tests. We do not look at any scores that you've or any tests that you've self-studied outside of your class. We really want to see what have you done with what has been presented to you. The other piece is the essay. That's the critical piece for us, making sure you answer all parts of it. That can make or break an application. We denied a perfect test score this year in GPA to computer science that wrote about a different school in their essay. And we admitted a student that was far below the profile because their academics were so strong and their essay was so passionate. So I can just say it is very much holistic. There's not a magic formula. Just do your best with what you're offered.
Great. Thank you so much. And so I think we will wrap it up at this point, but I do want to give our admissions officers just the opportunity to say a final thought if you would like.
Thank you all so much for attending and taking some time to learn a little bit more about each of our institutions. And I think I just want to say that we know that this is a particularly complicated and complex time right now, but international students are vital to our campus communities, and we are so glad that you are looking and interested, and please reach out to us if and when we can be helpful to you throughout this process.
I completely agree with Sarah, and I also think just everything going on in the world right now, it shows that a college degree can be more important than ever. There's a lot of change happening, a lot of innovation. We need problem solvers, critical thinkers, students who really are going to be leaders in the future. And I see that with UVA students every day. And I know that many of you are thinking about the same thing. So we look forward to hopefully welcoming you on our campuses in the future.
Thank you all so much. I think everything that my colleagues have mentioned has just been pretty spot on. So trust your counselors, trust your sources at the universities. We're here to help you through this time, and know that we're all in this together, and we want to make sure we continue the conversation. So reach out to us if you have questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I know there's a lot competing for your time, and especially I know today's a public holiday in Korea. So thank you for spending part of your day with us. Next week, we will have another great webinar with about Boston and its institutions. But before we go, I do want to thank our sponsoring schools. So thank you. We could not do this without you. Please continue to spread the word amongst your friends and your parents to join us every Tuesday. It will continuously be very informative and interactive, and do register, because that's how the admissions officers will stay connected with you in the future. So 감사합니다. 오늘 참석해 주셔서 너무 고맙고요. 다음 주에도 버스턴 대학교들에 대한 웨비나가 있을 겁니다. So thank you, and we will see you next week. So many thanks to Sarah and Clara and Jess. Thank you all. Bye.